All right, we are coming back with a part two of taking your training to the next level. And one of the biggest things, because like in our first training, right, we really talked about taking this place of like really pushing ourselves in our training. Like we went over how to warm up, how to record our weights, how to push really hard, and even like how to like intentionally progressively overload, right? And the biggest thing I hear typically as women are in the gym and wanting to push or wanting to like, put on muscle. And they're like, I want to lift heavier, but I'm afraid of getting injured. And I think the biggest thing is that's very real, right? Because I mean, we have I hate to say this, but like we could get injured just walking around our house, right? There's always an opportunity that we could get injured, right? Even if you look at like professional athletes, they get injured, right? So injury can happen. And I think our biggest thing though is can we prevent injuries from happening? Abso-freaking-lutely. And so the funny part is this training is probably not going to be anything that's like maybe mind-blowing. Um, but I want us to go back to some of these basics that sometimes we're like, oh, like I'm good. I don't need to focus on this. But I don't care if you are a brand new lifter, you've been lifting for years, you're advanced, you're a bodybuilder, you're a bikini competitor. Like the basics and foundations are essential. Essential. And there's a reason why they are essential. So, our goal is always to train like not harder, yes, harder, but smarter, right? Training smarter because we're going to talk today mostly about when, our body's not responding the way we think it should. That goes back to our first training, yes. But also that place where it's like, I want to push harder, but I'm worried I'm going to get hurt. That's part of this puzzle too, because without this piece, we might be leaving reps on the table, or there might be other things popping up. So let's just dive on in. So, big thing I want us to think about is I typically see two types of lifters in the gym. And I don't just mean women, like, even in my own gym, I see this with males and females alike, both. I see people who are not really pushing themselves hard enough or like also moving really quickly through their movements. Like it's like just really like, I got to get this, I got to get in and get out and do it. And then there's also the person who's pushing way too much weight and they're not even working the muscle groups that they are intending to. For example, like lat pull downs are notorious for this, where I see people just using their biceps, their traps are up, and it's like this. Now, our goal, in a lat pull down, like if we want to work our traps, cool. There's exercises for that. Or if we want to work our biceps, there's way better exercises for that. Just, bicep curl, like any type of bicep curl, like cable, hammer, standing bicep curl with dumbbells. I mean, we can get crazy, preacher's curl, like all of it. But what happens is I see a lot of women like being like, well, I don't want to push too hard because I don't want to get injured. But then they're rushing through movement patterns. Or I see people pushing way too much weight, and that's also a sign that we could get injured. Both of these things are very real, and both people can get injured, even if like we're lightweight or heavyweight. There's not, your body isn't necessarily like, oh, it's just super heavyweight, right? Um, Usually what happens too is most women or people, like, and I'm calling women out, but this stands for men too. Most women don't randomly just get hurt. There are signals. Our body is always, always, always communicating with us. And I think that's so beautiful. Like, I was having a conversation with a client this week about that. Like, I just think that's such a beautiful thing that our bodies are trying to communicate. We just sometimes aren't always good at listening. Like, we sometimes are like, I know better. I'm gonna push through. And that's not always the best thing to do. So pain usually is the last thing to show up. We think like when we start feeling pain, that's like, oh shoot, I did something. But typically it was like sessions before, days before, like pain is usually the last thing to show up. So if we've gotten injured, most likely we've ignored signals that your body's been like, hello, hey, e. So the big thing is we don't want to ignore them. That's kind of huge. So what our body does, right? Our body's a great adapter. You've heard me say this like 3,000 times, but our body is a really, really great adapter. That's what it's meant to do because our body's always meant for survival, right? Like our body's not necessarily meant to be like this aesthetic thing. The cool thing is we can do that. We can push our limits of our body and shape our body in all the best possible ways. Like, I mean, that's why we're here. We're physique shaping. But your body's a great adapter. And so what happens is your body will compensate to move weight. So even if it's fast movements or really, really heavy weight, your body will compensate to move it. So that means it will adapt and shift if your glutes are not strong enough to move a weight, say like in an RDL. Guess what? Your back, your traps, your arms, like other muscles will pull in to take over. Now, what can happen is when your body starts compensating too, it's not always just like I said, just this like one thing. Usually what happens is we start feeling tight in our body, right? There's probably like my hips feel tight, my shoulder feels tight, like we've all been there, me included. Like where I'm like, ooh, my hips, like I can tell you this week, my hips are really, really tight. And I know that's from like a couple different things. Um, but usually when something in your body is signaling it's tight, that's already a sign that there's going to be a muscle weakness kind of showing around that. So if your shoulder's tight and then we're doing shoulder presses, there's a potential there that like your shoulders are already weak and the areas around that shoulder are trying to compensate, like your joints, your ligaments, tendons, like even like your traps, like other muscle groups. So it's not just muscles, it can be like other things. So that weakness in your muscle then makes other muscles, other things, not just muscle, like I said, ligaments, tendons, things like that, start to shift to load your bar, to load your dumbbell. And then we keep training, right? We push really hard. We do that progressive overload, but our body is still compensating. So it's having to push harder, it's having to work harder to drive that movement and also not using the muscle we want. For example, lat pull downs notorious where people are just pulling with their arms. And it's like that's not what we're trying to work, right? We're trying to work those beautiful lats in our back. Then what happens is over time, that compensation, right? We're pushing these other muscles to take over, and we keep lifting heavier and heavier and heavier. And that's where the pain comes in. So that initial signal of like the tightness, also the signal of like, hey, I'm doing a lat pull down, but all of a sudden, I'm feeling just my biceps. We're ignoring those like little red flags because our brain's like, I gotta push, I gotta push, I gotta push, I gotta progressive overload. And I think that's the piece where it goes back to, like I said, we want to train smarter because just training harder for the sake of training harder doesn't win, right? So our first training, we were like, let's progressive over, let's train hard, let's let's go. But there's also this piece of we want to be really intentional about what we're doing. It's not just push hard, it's also push hard, but also with this beautiful awareness of what we're doing, what muscles we're working, all of that. Because pain didn't come because of your training. Like it didn't come because of your training or your workout or whatever. It's because we trained through this like dysfunction, right? We trained through not allowing the actual muscle we want to work. So those are the pieces that we want to avoid. One, because when we're trying to shape our physique, and like I know I have very, very, very specific goals, right? Like I'm in prep for my second bikini competition this year. Like even now, like I know I can't really put on muscle, but when we go back into my improvement season, it's game on. I am physique shaping to very specifically shape and build my body to the standards that we need, right? But I never want to train through and start training like my traps more or training areas of my body that don't need to grow. And that doesn't mean I can't still train things, but there's pieces here where we are trying to really shape our bodies and we want to bring the intention and intensity and aware and all of it. The whole puzzle comes together. So we never want to ignore these signals. That's my biggest thing for us is a lot of times it's like, oh, I'm tight. Now, tight does not mean we don't need, we can't work out. So don't see like, oh, my body's tight, because that's real. Especially if you sit a lot, like, you work from home or maybe in an office, or, you're not like constantly up and moving around. Your hips are probably tight. Your shoulders are probably rounded forward. Those are very real compensation patterns like across the board. So those pieces, like your warm-ups and things like that, remember when we talked about like the warm-ups, the initial warm-up in True Coach, that is like to kind of open you up, open your hips, open your shoulders. The actual warm-up you do before you get into like set A or set B and really warm up with like the actual movement. So an RDL, right? I might still need to open my hips up before I do a bunch of glute work, or I might need to like even just activate glutes, things like that before my whole glute workout. But then when I start to go into my RDLs, I still need to warm up. I had RDLs this morning, and that was the first thing I did. I warmed up, and then I went into my RDLs and warmed up for those very specifically. So we don't want to train through and just be like, oh, like, no, it's fine. My body's tight. My other muscles are working. That's fine. Just keep putting more weight on the bar. And what can happen, right? And what this can look like in real life, right? Is you specifically feel like certain muscles and like movement patterns you do. For like example, you always feel your quads in everything, right? Or you always feel your low back in an RDL and not your glutes. You always, your shoulders or your arms take over like any type of pulling motion, right? One side might work harder than the other. Very real. Most people have imbalances in their body, where, our goal is to look symmetrical, but a lot of times one side can be stronger. I have a stronger leg, and it's super funny. I have like a stronger leg with glutes and one stronger leg with quad. And like my goal right now and still is to like balance those out, right? So you want to make sure that, one side isn't taking on all the load or training harder than the other side. And the other thing that this all can look like in real life too is like you're training hard, you're, in a maintenance phase or maybe a slight surplus, and you're like, I'm not seeing a growth. I'm not seeing my body shift. I'm not seeing it change. I'm not seeing it grow. Most likely, there's a piece here where we need to really look at, hey, are we really being intentional with our lifts and our body? And here's the cool thing about our bodies too, which I said earlier. If you do train something wrong, right? So say you are doing RDLs and you're feeling it in your low back, your body has adapted to that and has worked through that and is like actually probably building a little muscle there. So it's going to be a little bit harder to like always have an injury in those places. But what we don't want to do is get so lift like as we're progressively overloading, putting more weight on the bar, that's where we actually start to see, oh my gosh, I do hurt myself because now I'm pushing past my limits. Um, and if you see yourself in any of these, good, right? Like a lot of times you're like, no, that's me. Um, no, good, right? Because now we can do something about it, right? The first thing, and surprise, how many times have I said this too? Awareness is everything. Being so aware of what we're doing, what's happening in your body, where you're feeling it in your body is going to make massive shifts, not only in your training, but in your growth, right? Like, not only are you going to be like, yes, my glutes are lit up, or oh my gosh, yes, my lats and my back. That's what we want versus a number, right? And a lot of times that's what a lot of people start to chase is I need more problem. I mean, I need more problems. Sorry. I need more weight. Like I have to put more weight on this bar. And the reality is no, that's not always the answer, right? Because even like this problem, right? Our root problem is your nervous system is really what, especially at the beginning, we start to train our nervous system of like handling the weight, handling the stress, handling pushing more over time. And it moves the movement, it pushes the load. But if your body doesn't feel safe, it will change how we move it. I know I kind of already said this, but repetition is key. You're going to hear me say it again and again. And bear with me. But your body's goal is to survive, not to look pretty, right? So at its bare function, like bare, not function, but bare root, your body will be like, oh, you want me to move this super heavy weight or even super lightweight? Cool. I can move it however we need to move it, right? However I need to, it will shift the tension in the muscles, like I said, the ligaments, the tendons. It will shift the load. It will also do this to protect you, right? Even if that means sacrificing your physique goals, because the goal for your body isn't like, oh, yes, I'm trying to feel this in my glutes. Your body's like, we have to, like, it's fight or flight. When we're in the gym, you are literally in fight or flight. Your body thinks in this moment you're being chased by a tiger. And then you're resting, right? And you're like, oh, I'm just chilling here. I'm just resting. No, your body's like on high alert. It's resting, but it's like, we're resting. Well, we got to be on high alert because if this tiger is still around, we got to run again, right? And then you do. You go and push weight again, and it's like, see, knew it. We're on high alert. So the whole time you're in the gym, your nervous system, everything, you're in fight or flight mode. Even though like for me, I'm having the best time of my life, enjoying myself. I love pushing myself, but your body's going to protect you. So in these moments, when we're doing that, we want to just be really mindful that like every single rep you perform, right, is a pattern you are reinforcing in your body. So a good rep is going to build your body and build your muscles, right, in the right places. If we are doing these compensations, like in doing that, it will build dysfunction in your body, right? And then it's going to take time to also unlearn things you've learned. And that I think can be the hardest part too, is like, I feel like I should, one of the worst words in the world. I should have this movement pattern down. But say, just like anything, right? Your brain has wired a pathway in your, like, for this movement pattern. This is how we do it. And so trying to unlearn it and do it a different way is going to take practice and reps and time. But our goal is the reps you perform, anything you perform, good or bad, it's going to be reinforced in your body. It's going to create a pathway in your brain. And then, yeah, it will take time to unlearn it. So we don't want to reinforce the problem, right? We want to be able to continue moving in the right way. Now, I've already said this, but like signs that your body is compensating is you're feeling the exercises in the wrong place. One side is doing most of the work. There's constant tightness, like even when you're doing hip thrust, you're like, all I feel is my hip flexors. Like I just feel like my hips are so tight. Or you're just like, I did lateral raises and all I feel are my traps. Not a good sign, right? Those are all signs that your body is trying to reroute, right? It's trying to be like, how do we move this weight? And it's pulling in other things. We don't want that. If your joints are hurting and not your muscles, sign that we're compensating. If you start to notice like you just cannot break through like a certain weight, and there are certain weights that I will say lateral raises for me, I just think those, because our shoulders are such tiny muscles, right? They're gonna take a lot more to like progressively overload over time. Versus my legs and even your legs, our legs are big, big muscle groups. They also, a lot of leg movements, we're using more than one muscle group. Like even in a squat, your quads are working, your glutes are working, and your hamstrings are supporting everything. And they're isometrically working. Now, they're growing? No, but they're helping and supporting. So, we know these compound movements are so important, but the legs are going to be able to push. There are going to be times we have strength plateaus, and I was thinking we could do a taking a training to the next level part 3 and talking how do we move through like plateaus when we get to a place where like I cannot break through this number on a squat or a leg press or what insert movement pattern here. Um because this is what we've already done, right? We've already been taught in our first training sesh, push hard, lift heavy, right? This is so real. Like you hear on social media, you got to train hard, you got to lift heavy. But if we're just pushing weight to push weight, that's not the right way, right? You're pushing hard, but we're just not using the right weight. We're not using the right intention. It's not heavy is always going to be subjective to you. And I think sometimes our brain is like, we have to lift the heaviest dumbbell or weight possible. And that's heavy means I'm lifting with intention. I'm lifting with purpose and awareness, and I'm using the right muscles. So I think that piece with what we already learned in training part 1, where I was like, let's push, let's go. Because I do think a lot of us leave reps on the table, very real. But there's also a place where we always say form first, right? Form first. And when we have this mind muscle disconnect, right? We talked about this, like we want that mantra of lift heavy, but when it gets taken too far, we stop listening to the body and we start pushing beyond our limits. And that is how we can get injured, right? And even the opposite, even if we're doing like I keep saying heavy reps, but this also goes into play with really lightweight, where people are just rushing through movements and not controlling them. And what happens is your body does compensate there too. So, intensity in the wrong muscle, again, we're reinforcing dysfunction in the body. So, RDL, you're feeling it in the low back instead of your hamstrings or glutes. The lat pull down, you're feeling it in your arms and shoulders instead of your lats. Again, this is a sign that we want to be listening to. The mind muscle connection is very important in a place of like really being able to say, I'm not just momentum, I'm not swinging weight up, I'm using the actual muscle in my body to drive it up. And that I think can be really challenging because it takes time. It's like any relationship, right? Any relationship with a friend or a spouse or like significant other or whatever, it takes time to build that relationship and it takes time to build that connection within yourself of really focusing on like where you're feeling it and like where am I actually like driving it up or am I like just throwing, like swinging things up? The muscle should always be moving it. So the biggest thing there is when we start pushing beyond our limits, injury real, right? Injuries real, or even if we're rushing. So one of the biggest things, and I said this is not going to come as like a massive surprise, but hopefully what it is going to do is be just a really good reminder of what we need. So before we start lifting super heavy, and before even with the mind muscle connection piece, the thing that I truly believe we need first is stability. Without stability, now there are times like if you do get injured, you might go to physical therapy. And a lot of times you do things like where you're being tested with your balance and stuff like that. And that is very strategic. Now, when we're trying to build muscle, right? You're trying to grow your shoulders or grow your glutes or even grow your abs or whatnot, or your quads. It doesn't matter what muscle group. The ability to have stability is going to be so incredibly important because if we don't have stability, right? The definition I put here is the ability to maintain balance, control, proper joint alignment during a movement under load. Now, without stability, what we end up doing is your body will have to shift, right? It's like a chain of events up your body that will shift again to move the weight. So, when it comes to some foundational pieces, we want stability over load. And this still means we want a progressive overload. I know I keep saying like it almost sounds like I'm contradicting myself right now, but what I want us to think about is it's not about one or the other. We still want a progressive overload. We still want to push ourselves, but we want to make sure these key foundational pieces are there first. And it's why we stress it so much. And sometimes, and I know myself personally, it can be hard when it's like somebody says, "Hey, you probably need to lower the weight." Like your coach is like, "Let's lower the weight. Let's bring this back. We need to work on this form." They're not doing it against you, right? They're actually doing it for you because if we don't have those pieces, we're not building muscle in the right place. We don't want you to get injured. We want you to progress and build the physique the way you want. And that's why we stress things so, 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 so much. So your stability matters. So we're going to go over some checkpoints. I don't know why this is going so slow. Sorry. There we go. So our checkpoints are going to be your feet. It's always going to start ground and then think up. So everything from the ground, if your feet aren't set, immediately your core, your glutes, and your scapula probably are going to be off. So if one breaks, thinks like if the feet break or if the glutes break, everything up the line is going to break or can break down the line as well. And so what we want to think about is this is one I think I see probably the most. And one that is so overlooked, right? Because we're like, let's go, let me go, let me do my movement pattern. And I do think even social media will do this too, where they'll put um, like put the weight in your heels, put the weight, in your toes or like wherever. No, you want a nice, stable foot. Stability from the bottom is you this is your base. Like this is like the base of the pyramid, right? Without it, everything's gonna like we need to create a really strong foot. And a lot of times what I see is people rocking into their heels and their toes come up. Fun fact, if you wanted to know, your big toe connection to the ground is really important, especially for building glutes. A lot of times when we pull up our heels, that pressure we want, sorry, my hand is trying to be a foot, but I like to think of it as your big toe is grounded, your pinky toe grounded, and then your heel of your foot is grounded. And so all your toes, right? We want really nice and gripped onto the ground. We don't want to ever like lean into our foot heel so much that everything comes up. We want this nice stable foot because it also helps prevent our knees from collapsing. It creates a really grounded force into the ground and it's going to help with your balance. Number one, it's going to help with balance. But like I said, if your feet are off, your hips are going to be off. And that means like it's just going to start going up the line, right? So we want this movement pattern. Check your feet. Check your feet. If you start to notice like in an RDL and your toes are popping up, keep your big toe grounded. I promise you, you'll probably feel your glutes even more. With one that I know it sounds so simple, but I promise you, you will feel your glutes even more just keeping that toe on the ground. I like to think majority of movements pushing through the very mid of your foot, right? Not pushing through just the heel or just the toe, but pushing through the entire foot. So I like to think midfoot because if we're pushing through the midfoot, that's kind of pushing through. You're using like the whole foot, right? We can push through the heel, the toes, and the midfoot all together. Excuse me, all together. So we want that piece. Always check your feet. And this is the beauty, and I'll talk about this in a minute, but like checking these things as you're warming up, right? Because as we're getting into the movements, I know a lot of times we're like locked in. I know I'm locked in, but I pay so much attention to my feet. It's ridiculous because I want to make sure my toes and my heel are all grounded. And the more force we can create into that ground, the more stability, the better balance, and then less compensation just from our feet. That's going to help prevent a lot of injury. Now, another stability checkpoint is going to be your core, your abs, right? Your intra-abdominal pressure. What I see a lot of people do is kind of suck in. They're like, I'm gonna just suck in. Like, no, we want to create and zip up the abs, right? So, almost, especially for women, especially if you've had a baby, kids, things like that, even if you haven't, even thinking about like picking up from the pelvic floor and zipping up and really get that nice and punched. You can still breathe. It doesn't, if you're sucking in, you can't breathe. That's where you'll like, you have to like let it out and then like suck back in. If you're zipping up your abs, you can breathe and keep it zipped in. You can breathe and keep it zipped in. I promise. Take some time to practice, but we want to do a nice 360. So we're going to breathe into our lungs. So you're going to breathe into your sides. You're going to breathe out in front of you and into your back. So you're literally like trying to breathe into like think like I like to think of like a Diet Coke can. Like we're breathing into this Diet Coke can, but our abs are nice and tight. We want to brace before we move. Or even if we're picking up a weight, I'm braced before I pick up a dumbbell. I'm braced before I like, as I'm like racking, like getting under a squat. I don't care if I'm on a Smith machine. I don't care if I'm on a leg press. I don't care if I'm doing a lateral raise. I am being like feet locked, zipped up abs, and that anytime your abs are not engaged, your low back is guaranteed. I can guarantee your low back will take over. It's that's what its goal is. Your body, if your abs are not engaged, or if we do have glutes that aren't that strong, your back will take over the load because your back is strong. It's another bigger muscle group. But what happens is we don't want to just build up this massive low back, right? That's not okay. And what I see most back injuries come from is not bracing. And that's what I think most people are scared of. And as somebody who I had back surgery 10 years ago from having, I had a bunch of herniated discs in my back and one ended up kind of exploding out, not from lifting, literally from doing like random things. I don't even remember exactly what it was. I think I was lifting like some boxes, but that wasn't what did it. It was like I bent over and I like picked up my keys. That was like where I was like, oh, and I had sciatica pain for 2 years. And then I eventually had to have surgery because one of my discs actually exploded, like literally, like exploded out in my back. And they had to like go and clean it up and like take all the little fragments and pieces out of my back. I didn't engage my abs. Like, I already know looking back at that, I'm like, oh, Sierra. But don't just know that like if your back is taking over, this is an area you want to checkpoint, right? Feet, abs, and I know we've talked about like proper posture and we talk about these things, but the reason we talk about it so much is because you can prevent injuries just from doing this in everyday life. Because, like I just said, it wasn't the lifting boxes was like the initial, like something's off. But what did it was like something so simple around the house. It was the signal. Pain was the last resort. Pain came when it, as like a last signal to me. There were other things that I just ignored and I ignored. And I didn't think about like zipping and bracing my abs, like lifting a box, which was silly. I look back and say that's silly, but you learn, you get better. But your abs actually protect your spine. So if your abs aren't engaged, your back will take over. If your glutes aren't engaged, your back will take over. So we always want to be thinking about feet, abs, right? And then our other one, there's two more, glutes and hips. The big thing about glutes as another checkpoint is the glutes will control your hips. So, I think a lot about when I think about hips, um, we want to keep your hips nice and square. So I like to think about these headlights. Like there's two headlights one on each side of your hip, right? We want them to be shining in the same direction. Sometimes that might be shining at the floor, sometimes that's shining up here. But what happens is sometimes our hips, like our foot is off balance, and then our abs aren't engaged. And immediately what happens is our hips shift to compensate and work through movement patterns, right? And then I see this a lot in cable kickbacks where all of a sudden, or a single leg RDL, you'll see it. Their hip will just start shifting instead of the headlight staying straight forward, right? And aligned. That's one of the biggest things we want to prevent because if we start in that place of like the hips getting offline, guess what? The glutes get disconnected, the quads start taking over. And then in a society where a lot of people are more quad dominant and they're like, I want to build my glutes. Well, the glutes aren't doing the work, right? Your quads and your low back will take over for your glutes. So when we're thinking about our hips, we really want to think headlights on hips, really zipping up those abs, keeping those feet grounded. That will help support your movement pattern. And I know this is a lot of things to think about, as well as like the cues that you're using in your lifts. But I promise you, if we do these checkpoints like consistently, and you do them every single lift for probably a couple weeks to a month, maybe 2 months, this will start to just become what you do. I know I said I like think about it, but I do really think about like, okay, like feet. It's like almost like just like a quick checklist I run through before I start my lift or before I even like when I was doing my barbell RDLs, I was like, all right, zip up the abs, feet locked, let's go. Like lats on, pull in shoulder blades down. I pull it, pick up the bar, and then I'm like hinge back, glutes up, boom. I'm saying a lot of cues, but they're also now such muscle memory. So that's what we want to create is this space where we're setting our body up so that we keep all the compensation as minimal as possible. We feel those muscles working, the ones we want to working, and keeping the ones we don't want out. And then the last one is going to be your scapula, which this one can be so tough, especially if we're rounding our shoulders forward. Because if your shoulders aren't set, what'll happen is your shoulders and your traps will take over movement patterns. So we really want to think, pull those shoulder blades into your back pockets, right? I also like to think lats, like pull your lats down or pull your armpits down to your pelvis. That can also be really helpful. And I also would add like queen energy. I like to think like there is a crown on my head and I don't want it to fall off. Like I want my head and my chest lifted, like everything in this beautiful place and pulling my shoulder blades down. That alone, just walking around like that, right, just puts off a beautiful energy, number one. But number two, if I'm lifting, even if I'm lifting not upper body, right? I literally do this when I'm doing an RDL. So my shoulders aren't rounding because what happens when my shoulder rounds? Look, is my, spine going to be in neutral? No, my back is starting to round. And guess what I'm going to start using? My back, not my glutes. So all of these little things, there's a reason I'm like hitting these four very specifically, is because if we can get our feet, that tripod foot, abs zipped up, really nice and braced, really creating that intra-abdominal pressure, really keeping headlights on hips for movement patterns, making sure they're like stable and aligned and facing the same way, right? We don't want one hip this way and one hip this way. And our scapula pulled down, queen energy, like boom, your lifts will improve and your injury rate will massively, massively decrease. So this is why I'm hitting this kind of hard. And I know it's things that you probably are like, I know this. But it's also sometimes the things that we are like, I know that. And I skip over it. And I say that as somebody who's done it. I've done it. Like there's been moments I'm like, ah, or last week in my RDLs, I even wrote in my notes like, ooh, abs gave out. And that's where I was like, I stopped the lift. And I even wrote, I probably had one more rep, maybe even two, but my abs gave out and I needed to actually like reset really well because I like zipped up, but then I like lost control. That was form failure. That's where I stopped. And so for me, if I'm losing stability, right? And that doesn't mean like, hey, I might get off on my feet or something like that and I can't reset. You can reset during your set, right? You can reset. But if you notice like an RDL, I'm lifting really heavy, I'm like, I want to reset, but I'm also fatigued. I'm at like almost quite literally to failure. I wasn't gonna try to like reset and do it maybe not great and then try to like that was where I was like, I don't want to get injured. So I listened to those foundational pieces to make sure I'm still moving forward. So this is something that can be really powerful is the stability. So I have some examples. I know I already said this, but like it, for example, you are doing an RDL, you're feeling it in your low back. Immediately can tell you your core is probably not braced. I'd also check your feet. I'd also check that you're pulling your lats down. Why? Because here, if our abs aren't on, your back is going to take over. Also, if we're lifting way too much weight, your back is going to compensate for your glutes. So if we're not stretching, or I also see a lot of people try to pull the weight up, but that's not our goal. Our goal is literally the glutes are trying to push, not trying, they're pushing that weight forward. Your hands are just like ropes holding it, like they're just there to hold it, hold the weight for you, and your glutes are the one moving. The things that we can do to fix, absolutely. Can we like, bend a little bit more in our knees? Sure. We can really think, push those hips back, slow down your tempo, stop where that tension and hamstring tension, like where you get that nice stretch. It's not about going as far down as possible because you can start to recruit recruit more quad just by like going down further. Or you could just start recruiting your back because at a certain point you will engage your back in an RDL. If you start trying to push the weight down, your back is going to have to take over because you've put it in that position. So a lot of times we need to just adjust the weight and pull back. And I know the mindset piece is, oh no, I'm regressing, right? I'm having to pull back on weight. I'm regressing, but like you're not. If you are pushing weight that your body is compensating, right? You're feeling a tricep pull down in your shoulders, then we're not working the muscle we want to work. So pulling back the weight and feeling the muscle we want to work, huge progressive overload. That is progressive overload. Pulling back on weight and actually having that mind muscle connection, we're progressively overloading. We're also not getting injured because if we're starting to feel it in our shoulders, your shoulders are taking on a lot of load. They're going to start breaking down over time. We don't want to do that. So it's not a bad thing to pull back on weight. And I know that can be hard. I know it can be hard, but tell yourself, like, hey, I'm not even working the muscle like that I want to. I'm working my back in an RDL. Is that what you want to keep growing right now? Like, pause for a minute. Is that really what you want to grow? No, no. So pulling back weight and getting the movement, also checking those checkpoints, right? Feet, abs, hips, scapula pulled, queen energy. We're in a good place, right? And if you lower the weight and you're feeling it in your glutes, guess what? Now we're actually progressive overloading. Now we're actually putting the work where we want it. And that's where we're going to build muscle. Your body doesn't know a number on the barbell. Your body only knows the muscle tension, right? That is what we're working. So if you need to lower the weight, lower the dang weight, like all the time. I see this one all the time, lat pull downs where people are lifting way heavier. And even as they do it, their shoulders are up by their ears and they're just pulling down with their arms, pulling down with their arms. If you're feeling your arms and your shoulders in a lat pull down, your scaps aren't on. I bet you anything your abs aren't on. I also bet you your feet might not be even planted really well. Um, so this is where even with a lat pull down, it's like if you're feeling your arms and shoulders, immediately pull back weight, right? Immediately pull back weight and tell yourself, like, I'm not even working my lats, which are right here below your shoulder blade, right? We're not even working the muscle I want to build, right? Because if we build out a beautiful back, it makes your waist look smaller. And that's a beautiful thing. That like hourglass look. We got to build out the lats. Well, if you're pulling up your traps, that's not helping the hourglass look, right? It's not. We really want to pull those elbows down. Like I said, same thing. Feet grounded, zip up abs, pull those shoulder blades back, queen energy, right? Lift chest, lift head, and we're driving down, right? Really thinking about using the back and not pulling with the bicep or pulling with the shoulder, leading with your elbows. So, biggest thing there is really controlling the movement, but also it's okay if we need to pull back on weight. And that's what I wanted to say with the last training. I know it was like, let's push weight. Like sometimes there is a moment where there might be certain exercises in your lifts where it's like, I can push weight here and I need to push weight. And there might be other ones where you're like, you know what? In a hip thrust, I've never felt my glutes. Well, that's a signal, right? And we don't want to ignore it because that is how we can injure you. And no, and the last thing I want is somebody to be out of the gym. I want you in the gym to stay in the gym and to keep in the gym and to build and shape your body. Like that is what we all want. Now, example, and I'm going to preface squats, we can bias to be more quad, more glute, whatever. So I'm using this as like a glute focused example because there are very specific squats we can do to work your glutes. If you're feeling all in your quad, right? But we're trying to work our glutes using a squat, you don't have your glute engagement, right? So your feet are definitely unstable. Your abs are not engaged. I would also guarantee that our back might not be locked in. Um, and your glutes have stopped doing the work and your quads are taking over because they're stronger. So again, we might need to adjust weight because if your quads are taking on the load, that's if another muscle group is taking over for the one we're trying to work, the weight's probably too heavy. Um, Also, where I see people just drop into a squat. There's no controlling the movement down. You want to really control anytime you're lowering the weight. And sometimes lowering the weight is when like a lat pull down is when your hands are like coming up to the top, right? We're driving it down, we're letting it come up in a squat as we're lowering, you want to control it. It's not like just drop into it and go. But we want to check our feet. We want to check our abs are zipped, our back is tight. Those pieces will help support. And, we also want to make sure that, like, anytime we're doing a movement, we're not just being like, well, I was supposed to be feeling my glutes, but all I felt was quad. Okay, cool. Add 10 more pounds. No, it's like, it's okay if some exercises, like you might be stronger in a quad dominant squat and weaker in a glute dominant squat, and that is a-okay. They're not the same, right? A heel elevated squat, we're going to work more quad. Anytime our our knees are pushing over our toes, that's going to be more quad. So it's okay if, or even like a Bulgarian split squat, for example, it's okay that your quad squats, Bulgarians versus a glute Bulgarian, you might need to use different weights because they are two different movement patterns. They're not the exact same. Similar, but not the exact same. So just note that if you know you're more quad dominant, or if you know you're more glute dominant or hamstring dominant or whatever, it's okay to be like, oh, I'm going to have to pull back on weight on a squat because my glutes, like, they just need time to catch up. They need more practice and reps. And guess what? The glutes aren't going to get stronger or build more if we keep letting the quads do everything. And not every squat pattern is what we want to build glutes, but like, I'm super tall. My glute pattern tends to be more hip dominant than ladies who are shorter, tend to be more quad dominant in just a normal squat. So it can also be your biomechanics and how your body and how, like, I have really long femurs and really long legs. So I am much more of a hip dominant squatter, so more glute based dominant than quad. So I definitely, to get more quad, I definitely have to, in a squat, elevate my feet or do something like a hack squat or Bulgarians, things like that, or elevating my foot at any time. Now, with all of this, your warm-ups are actually really powerful. And I know we talked about how to warm up in the last one, but using your warm-ups as a tool are really powerful. Give me just one moment. I'm going to pause for just a second. Boys, stop, please. Okay, sorry. I don't know if that even paused. But with our warm-ups, what we want to think about is your warm-ups are not just like a checkbox, right? And I mean your warm-ups at the beginning of the workout and also your warm-ups as you start your sets, right? Especially at the very beginning, your very first exercise, your second exercise, you want to create connection with your body. It is so important. And I have found when there are days that I'm even off, like there's been times I'm like, I have RDL'd my life away. And every once in a while, I'm like, this, like I'm warming up and I'm like, this doesn't feel right. Something is off. Something is off. And I really slow down and check myself in those moments. But I also make sure I'm treating all of those warm ups like it is my working set. Like this is it. This is my this is the actual working set that I'm doing. And the reason we want to do that is because it does create connection with our body. It also is creating awareness with your body as well, right? Awareness for you to be in a place of, hey, am I connecting my feet? Am I connecting my abs? Am I like really focusing on using my glutes, not just using momentum? Am I actually in a place where this is in control, right? I'm not just like, okay, go as fast as, I've got the bar, especially at the beginning where you just got like a bar and it can be easy to be like, oh, I'm just gonna just drop down and not control my squat, or I'm just gonna like just move really fast to just get it over with. But use this as like almost like a diagnostic tool of an awareness tool, a diagnostic tool, because if you're not checking in, it can be a place where we, don't always have everything locked in. And I must have put it somewhere else. That's okay. We'll come back to it. But I say the warm up because it is a really great way to start to see like what's tight, what's activating, what's not activating. Am I using my quads? Am I noticing I'm just like using more momentum? Because the warm up is still a time you can adjust and pivot things as needed. And it's a really good time, like I said, like it wasn't this week, but I think it was like a couple weeks ago in my lifts where my RDLs felt off. And I was like, it was driving me insane. We all have moments like this, and you will have a moment like this. I will have another moment like this. And I just had to take my warm-ups a little slower. I spent a little bit more time because I was like, I don't want to rush through this and hurt my back, because that's what will happen is I will, if I rush through it, I know that I'm going to start getting flustered and like frustrated and like and then guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to lose my checkpoints, my feet, my abs, my all of it. No, it made me be like, "Ugh, I know I'm frustrated, but I need to slow down so I can do this movement pattern better and more efficient and all of that." And if that meant that session I needed to pull back weight, I needed to pull back weight. Now, with everything, tempo can also be a really powerful tool. I know it's one of those things that people talk a lot about, mind muscle connection, right? Because it does. It slows everything down and you're having to hold and then having to come out of a dead stop. Really beautiful for like muscle tension and building muscle. Yes. Um, but, but it also can be really powerful for really understanding and nailing a movement pattern, and also control, especially if you're someone who likes to like rush through. And I know people will even be like, ooh, but when I use tempo, I have to lower weight. 100%. Same. When I have a pause at the bottom of a squat, I'm going to lift a lot lower. If I have a pause in the bottom of a leg press, guess who's going to lift less? If I have a pause at the bottom of a shoulder press, I'm going to lift less. That's not a bad thing. And if that's not regression, you have to think about a shoulder press is one movement, and a shoulder press with a tempo pause, 1 second pause is different than even like a 3 second pause, different, right? So they're different exercises, and yes, they're similar, but the pause does add, and a slower controlling is going to make you have to feel more in control. It's going to feel slow. It's going to feel like your muscles are shaking more. That's good because we don't want momentum. Momentum isn't intention or intensity. Momentum is just swinging. It's moving your body, it's getting weight up, but are we using the muscle groups to get the weight up? And so pauses, so like the slow eccentrics, that means we're going to slow the movement down. It's going to be really controlled. It's really going to highlight your tripod foot, your zipped up abs, your headlight hips, and your scaps. You're going to start to notice, oh man, I'm real rounding forward, or oh my gosh, my abs aren't zipped up. You're going to start to notice that even more in slow tempos. Do not ignore the tempos in your program. They are great for like just variation, but they're also really, really great for really knowing and learning and controlling your movement patterns. And with those pauses, when we don't have them, you're going to feel even stronger coming out of those. So we want to make sure like we lock in the right muscle groups. Or it's also going to slow down tempo is also going to expose the muscle groups that might be taking over. So it's really great awareness of, ooh, I'm feeling these RDLs actually in my quads, or I'm feeling them in my back, or wow, I'm feeling them here. That's really powerful. Or even like a Bulgarian, you're like, my stability is all over the place. Like it can be a really, really powerful tool. And we're prioritizing with a slow tempo, like just connection with that body versus just doing the movement and getting it done as fast as possible. I would rather someone go slow and controlled than fast. And I'm sure most of my clients, if they send me form feedback, I'm like, your control is so beautiful. And I mean that so sincerely because we want that control. If you're controlling the movement, that's going to be beautiful for not getting hurt, but you're also going to have a better chance activating your muscle groups too. So, don't ignore that tempo. It's beautiful. Um, like I said, slow down. You're going to feel it more. You're going to control it more. You're going to grow more. So fast reps can hide problems, which is what I said at the beginning. A lot of times people think, oh, if I just lift heavy, that's going to be the problem. That's how I get hurt. But fast reps, and I'm not saying no fast reps ever or no like pushing. Sometimes we do want to go a little faster, but slow reps are going to expose potential problems. So fast reps are going to hide them. Fast reps are, you might not even notice things as much. So tempo is going to force control. It's going to build stability and it's also going to prevent compensation during movement patterns, which is exactly what we want. Excuse me, my dog. She's trying to get in. Give me just a second. Thank you. Sorry, guys. It's one of those days. Um, but that is really powerful. And then we've kind of talked about this a little bit already, but form is always better than your ego. A number is a number. Your body doesn't know it. You do. Like you know it. So if you're like, I should be lifting 5 pounds heavier, but we're not feeling it in the right muscle groups, what we don't want to do is be like, oh, I'm going to push that 5 pounds anyway. No, form, intention, and really lifting with your muscle, right? With the muscle, not momentum, nice control, is always going to win over you, if that makes sense. Like your ego, you feeling like I should or I need to or I have to, because ego lifting is going to be just chasing a number, right? Intentional lifting is going to be chasing the actual stimulus, chasing that muscle tension, and really in connection with your body. And lifting heavy is great when done intentionally, right? We're lifting a heavy weight, and heavy can be subjective to you. So I know a lot of people be like, well, what weight do most women use on a shoulder press? Well, that's going to be so dependent on you, right? It's not about what other people are lifting in the gym. I have lifts that, yes, I definitely like have numbers in mind of like goals, and especially like not right now, but in improvement season that I'm like, I want to hit this on a hack squat or this with my Bulgarians or this. Like I do. I love that. It's like a little challenge. I love like pushing, but I don't want to push just to push. Um, Heavier isn't better, right? It's heavy to you, it's heavy to the, reps you're doing. Heavy is going to be, it's not like, oh, when I lift this weight, I made it. It's like, you can really use lightweight. And I'm not saying like we want to use baby weights and then just and like not have any intention either. We just want to make sure we're feeling it in the right muscle group. We want to make sure that we're controlling the rep with the muscle. Like, we're driving with the lateral delt, not just like swinging it up. Because I promise you doing this and just swinging up, your trap is going to take over. We're going to build traps. No. I mean, you can, but I think most women don't want to just. I don't want big old traps. We want to just control that rep. We want to make sure that the muscle is leading it, not just, whatever. Like we're owning this movement pattern and every movement pattern we do. And there's going to be some movement patterns you feel amazing in, and you're like, I crush these. And there's going to be some movement patterns where it might take more like thought and awareness and like, this one is my sticking point. That's okay. We all have them. Every lifter does. So we want to make sure that we're not just trying to chase a number or add 5 pounds just to add 5 pounds. If you're doing a tricep pull down and you're feeling it in your shoulders or you're feeling it in your traps, and you're not really feeling it, or you feel it like in your triceps for one or two movements and then it shifts, that's a good sign that your body's compensating, right? Your body's already trying to like work around the fact that your triceps aren't strong enough to lift that weight yet. I'm not saying ever, just yet. Um, so biggest thing is make sure your form is always on point. I know I talked about that one in the last one, but keep your stability in check. Make sure your form is on point, and we can keep progressive overloading, but we want to make sure we are pushing when to push and we're pulling back when we need to. So, when we can push, right? When is it good to push? When the movement is clean, when you feel the correct muscles, there's a strong mind muscle connection, energy is solid, the movement is stable, you are stable, your feet, your abs, your headlight hips, your scap, queen energy, you are stable. You feel like a powerhouse, right? And you're like, oh, I'm doing an RDL, my glutes are on. Like today, my glutes were on. I was like locked in. I was like, this feels amazing. Let's push. And I got like 2 more reps than I did last week. And it was amazing. And I was so excited. That is a good time to push. Now, a couple weeks ago, when my low back pulled in, when I lost my abs, I immediately stopped because I was like, form failure, form broke. That is a time to pull back. That's when I knew I needed to, one, really lock in the abs, but potentially my body was like not feeling as strong. I did actually pull back on weight the second rep, or the second set, not the second rep, the second set, and felt way better. If you start noticing like tightness and then all you feel is that tightness, a sign that we need to pull back on weight, pull back on really pulling back like our awareness of, hey, am I really focusing on just moving the weight or using my muscle to move the weight, right? Like not just getting it up, but is the muscle I want to work getting it up or moving it? If you're feeling it in the wrong muscles, right? Or other muscles, maybe you feel it, like I said, the tricep pull down, you feel it first, the first 2 reps in your triceps, and all of a sudden now it's in your shoulders, a sign that the weight is too heavy because the wrong muscles are starting to pull in. Like your triceps aren't able to do it for all the reps. So the other muscles are dominating, they're taking over to help move it because your body's going to do that, right? It's gonna figure out a way to move the weight if possible. Now, one other time I'm going to tell you to pull back is if you're feeling sick, if you're tired. There's been times I'm tired and I can still really push in the gym. I'm talking about like all of a sudden you've realized like I am exhausted. I do go warm up. I'm feeling like everything's super heavy. I feel lethargic. Everything feels hard. That's different. There's been times I've shown up at the gym and like, I'm tired today. And I've been able to crush out an amazing workout, like pushed, PR'd, all of that. there's a difference, right? And that's where it's like those warm-ups are really powerful. They're powerful tools of where am I? Where's my body? What is happening? That's not a time to go push more weight, right? Sometimes it might even be like, I need to pull back on weight from what I normally could do because my body's telling me it needs a shift. It might even be like, we need to sit out from my workout. So these pieces can be really solid, like just checkpoints of like, when do I want to actually push weight? When can I push really hard? Do I potentially need to say, this isn't it? This isn't the weight I want to use? Because the last thing I want is us to keep progressively overloading, us to keep progressively overloading the wrong muscle group, right? So we're not even shaping the body as we're designing it to be shaped and then hurt ourselves. That's like a triple whammy of like, no, no. And that's like the worst thing I don't want for anybody. No woman needs that. So, recovery is also really big about injury prevention, which is why I put the sick piece in there too. Um, Pushing while sick is your body's already stressed out because it's sick, and then you add working out, guess what? Your body will push you down and it will keep you sick longer, or you will get injured because your body is not in its strongest state. We're not mentally, physically in our strongest state, and we will make mistakes. Like we might not zip up our abs. We might just be like, I'm here, I'm moving this weight, and it might just be more momentum. You are in a prime opportunity to get injured. So your body will compensate. It's always going to communicate with you. And if we don't listen, we're going to have a problem. Poor sleep, right? Like I said, we're human. There's going to be nights, not every night is going to be magical. And if you're chronically not sleeping well, that's something to look at too. But if you have like a day that's like, oh, I just got awful sleep, your recovery is going to be low energy. Coordination or rushing is to get through it or just get it done can lead to injury, right? It's like, I have to do this. I have to get this done. It's 100% okay, again, if you need to pull back on weight, right? I'd rather you have one session where you pull back than you're now injured because we rushed through it or we picked up at weight our body wasn't ready to handle. Or we weren't listening, we were warming up and we're like, nope, I got to put what I put on the bar last time. That is a sign that we can just go down. Obviously, carbs are our best friend. If we're not recovering, carbs are going to help you with that. We use our carbs to train. So if we want to just push carbs really low, or even if you're in a deficit and you notice like, man, my energy is wiped. I know I've had, even in this prep, we had lower carb and we had to bring my carbs up because I was going hypoglycemic. And my body was just burning through carbs. And then what happens was for 3 or 4 days, I was like, my body had to reset because it was like going hypoglycemic for a couple of days. No fun. Low energy, dizziness, lightheadedness, like no bueno. So keep your carbs, or even if you notice, like talk to your coach, like, wow, every time I like leave my training session, like I'm lightheaded or like whatever, talk to your coach. High stress, guess what? You're gonna pull into certain muscles that your body will like hold tension in. My glutes, funnily enough, I learned will hold tension when I'm stressed. So will my traps. So when we're super stressed, that might be a time too that we're just really aware in the gym. Like your traps might want to try to take over because they're already going to be tight and they're already going to be kind of on high alert. Injury isn't just, like I said, it's not usually the training. It's usually that we're not listening to our body. And the last thing I want anybody to do is feel like they're not being able to stay in the gym. Um, and I think this also plays into our identity a little bit. So I will say, like, the next version of your body isn't just like, I need to push harder. And like I said, there are times, and this is where we start learning more about ourselves. Like, I know when I can push. And I've had reps where I'm like, I stopped a set too early. And I wrote in my notes, like, you had more, like you had more. You stopped, you gave up, you let Patricia win. No, next set lock in. There's been times I've been like, ooh, I am struggling with this weight today. I'm pulling back. Like I know on my hack squat a couple weeks ago, I had to pull back weight and I was not like I was like, no, I knew I pushed this last week, but I was like, my body's saying no, I'm gonna listen. Um, you become better, right? You build a better body, you train smarter when you move better, when you're connected to your body better, and we're actually training with awareness. So this goes back to like that intentional lifting when you're here, don't stress as much about the number on the bar. Think about, is my body feeling the tension? Are my quads working? Are my glutes working? Is the muscle that I'm trying to work, is it working? And am I pushing that muscle as hard as I possibly can with what I can bring today? That's where we need to live because a number will always be there. We can always keep pushing and chasing to that goal number. Um, Progressive overload isn't always about more weight, right? It's not always about one more rep. It is about really connection with the body too. And honestly, I will say like this can sometimes be a chrysalis phase because it can feel like I said that regression. It can feel like you're pulling back, but where things feel slower and harder and more intentional, this is actually where we tend to transform. And when you start to like slow down and start being aware of your body and aware of how you're feeling and where you start to build actually faster. So it feels like a slowdown, but you actually are like, my glutes are looking better. Ooh, we are able to push more. Ooh, I can push weight quicker now. And a lot of times it's that pullback. So every workout, what I want you to think about is, as you're going into your workout, just what feels tight, right? Like, are you already, like, I could tell you today, I knew my hips were already tight. And if you start to notice, Dixie, ma'am, no, ma'am, come here. Um, when you start to notice, like, oh, maybe my hips are always tight, something you can also tell your coach, right? Because then they might be able to put more of that into your warm-ups and things like that to keep you feeling good. If your hips are tight, right, you might be like, you know what, I really need to spend a little extra time. Not like I need to spend 10 hours or 10 minutes, but like I just need to be very connected with my glutes. I really want to make sure that like my glutes are pulling up and it's not pulling into my hips today, right? Um, Even thinking like I'm doing a hip thrust, as I'm getting it warming up, you know, are my feet in check? Where should I be feeling this? Like, am I feeling it where I should be feeling it? So during your actual lift, it's like, am I feeling this in the right muscle? Is my form really consistent? Am I controlling the rep? Like, am I in control? Is everything really purposeful and intentional, or am I just trying to move, right? Am I just momentum? Is it just up? Am I going up? Or like, is the rep controlling me, right? Is it just I'm dropping and I'm up? No. And then even after your workout, it's like, hey, is there anything I want to know about my body? Like, my RDLs, I always write in my notes, and I know we talked about note taking the last training, but I always write like glutes are lit, I'll usually write like what muscle I'm feeling. I will write typically like push. Like sometimes I give myself motivational writings for the next set. I'll say like up weight, lower weight, whatever I need. I will write all the little notes of like what was going on, or I felt this in my hips. I need to pull back. That way, I'm also aware the next session I go into what I can do better or what was happening last time. And just because it happened last time doesn't mean it will happen the next time. Sometimes we'll see patterns keep reoccurring, but I've had things where like my hips aren't usually this tight, and this week they're really tight. So I'm like, ugh, I know to this week it's just my hips have something's off a little bit, and I'm gonna do a little extra mobility around them. Cool. But it can be really powerful to take those notes, but also to check in with yourself so that you're golden. Um, common mistakes that I see is oh gosh, sorry. It's like I don't know why it's going so slow. And then I'm scrolling too far because I've already scrolled faster. Okay, I think we stopped. Next workout, what I want you to think today, tomorrow, if your next workout is Monday, what I want you to think about is pick one lift, right? Just pick one lift. And it can be a lift you know you've struggled with. It can be a lift you feel really strong in. There's no right or wrong. I would personally pick one maybe you've struggled with more, but sometimes it's nice to pick one that you're like, I feel really strong in this lift, so I can really think about it in the right way and then apply it to maybe like a lift I struggle with more in the future. So pick one lift and slow it down, right? Slow it down, get really intentional, and I really want you to prioritize like connecting to your body, connecting those stability checkpoints. Feet, zip up the abs, headlights on hips, queen energy, pull those scaps down. Get in that proper posture, but also start really thinking like, am I actually using my glutes in this hip thrust or in my RDL? Am I actually using my lats in my lat pull down or in my seated row? Or am I actually feeling my shoulders? Like, where is it coming from? Where am I feeling it? And identify in your notes where you're feeling it, right? Because that's really powerful. And then adjust before adding weight. So if you start to notice like, my traps are taking over rep 5, right? Okay, well that means 5 reps, I'm crushing this weight with whatever, my shoulders, right? And then after that, that's where my body starts to compensate. That's where my body, other muscles are pulling in because my shoulders can't lift it anymore. Okay, awesome. This is not something to judge us for. It's like, this is just data. Awesome. I don't want to do 5 more reps with my traps. Let's lower the weight, right? Beautiful. Adjust, next set. Easy. And if you don't know how to adjust, ask your coach, right? Those are great conversations. Be like, okay, so I did this, noticed this, felt it here. This is what, right? Because that's where we can like tweak, push, pull. Your coach can help support in lots of different ways. And what I'd say is, like I said, if you pick a stronger one, then next week or the next day, maybe pick one that you're weaker in and practice the same thing. Because what can happen is you're going to start feeling a lot more intentional, a lot more purposeful. Dixie Marie, a lot more purposeful, and that can be really, really powerful. And then you're going to start to see your body shift in shape in such a better, and not just for physique shaping, but to keep you in the game longer, right? Because the last thing you want is to have shoulder surgery or hip surgery or having to have something because we tore, some muscle. It's like the more we can be intentional, the less injury we're going to have. And it's not that we might not, like I said at the beginning, athletes have injuries, right? It's in a space where we can step back and say, hey, am I doing all the pieces to keep my body healthy, moving, and safe? And the more we can do that, you're gonna stay in the game longer. You're gonna stay in the gym longer. You're gonna feel good longer, which is honestly, that's what we all want, right? You're gonna recover better too, because like, right, if you're tight and then your hip flexors are doing all the work, they're just going to get tighter. They're going to get more agitated. So you're also just going to feel better holistically too. Um, and another thing that can be really great, if you just need like a scale of like, okay, I need to kind of think through like a one level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Level 1 is like kind of think of this as like I'm just moving the weight, like I'm just getting it up. Like it's up. I moved it, right? Level 2 can really be like, okay, I'm really focusing right now. We don't really want to do level 1. No. Okay, don't just move weight, please. Level 2, think I'm gonna really focus on like just controlling the rep. I'm gonna really make sure it's in control, right? And after the control, be like, where am I feeling it? Level 3 can be like, okay, I'm really feeling the muscle I'm targeting, right? Level 4 is like, I can adjust in real time. Like that means I might need to up next set. I might need a lower next set. I might need to lower a lot next set. Totally fine, right? That is progress. That is progressive overload, right? I would much rather you feel every single rep in your shoulders than 5 reps in your shoulders, but you used a heavier weight. Cool, right? Nobody, who are you trying to prove to? Who? The people at the gym, they don't care. They've got their own flashlight and they're pointing it at them. They're worried about them and their weight, right? What they're doing. They don't care about you. I don't care about people. That sounds awful. In the gym, I'm so locked into my business. My flashlight's on me. I'm like, what am I doing? What's my next set? What song am I gonna use? What are we doing? I gotta push this next weight, right? Like focus on you, but adjust in real time. There, you don't need to prove anything to anybody. Not yourself, not to anybody in that gym. It doesn't matter. Our goal is not to just move weight to move weight. Our goal in or just move to move. I've seen people, I'm like, please don't get hurt. That's when I'll notice somebody like just going as fast as possible and using a ton of momentum. I'm like, please don't get hurt. Please don't get hurt. Please don't get hurt. Because I don't want to see anybody get hurt in the gym. So just be in that place where you are the intentional lifter. Don't worry about a number. The numbers are just numbers. We make them mean something. You've made a weight mean something, and pulling back, you're making that weight mean something that it's not true. It's like we want to lift that weight well. And then level 5 is like, hey, I'm training with intention every rep. Every rep, I'm adjusting, I'm feeling the muscle, everything's locked in, I'm controlled, I'm focused, I'm locked in, I'm on. That's where we want to be. And the more connected we are with your body, the better. And for you, it's going to be really, really powerful as we move forward. Um, Final thoughts, like this is just, I know a lot of this is probably like, I know. But I want you to step back and say, hey, do I know? Am I actively doing it? Is there anything I could do differently? Is there anything I can do that I can still train really hard, still train really smart, but also train really aware, right? Training the right muscles so that we can grow the right muscles, so we can shape the right muscles, so you can build the physique that you actually want. And, if you're feeling stuck, if you're noticing you're like, I'm working my glutes so much, there's a piece here. We know how to push. And even if you need to go back and watch taking your training to the next level, part one, I really believe that this training is just as necessary as the other one because we know how to push. We get pushing the weight, we get pushing our limits, but we also want to make sure that we're doing it with the right intention and intensity. Everything is like mirrored together in our form, our body, our awareness, our ability to say, like, I know that I am training and I'm training the right muscle. And that doesn't mean you're not going to be human. You probably will at one point. Like there are moments where, like I said, my RDLs, I've got locked in and I just had an off day with them and I did pivot in that workout. And guess what? The next workout I did with my RDLs, I was locked back in. I just had a day. So I want you to know it happens. Like it's going to happen where you're going to have days where you're like, I do have to pull back because something's off. Pull back, right? Pull back. Don't ego lift. Don't push through just because you're like, well, I lifted it last week. So we have to this week or I have to progressive overload. Yeah, we want a progressive overload. Yeah, we want to push, but we don't want to push through the wrong muscle group. We don't want to push through pain. We don't want to push through tightness and that your body's trying to be like, hey, something's off. No, and you're just like, no, gotta push, gotta push. There's a balance, right? Or just using quick reps because those quick reps are going to hide problems too. So just in this place, um, our goal and my goal for you this next workout that you do, pick an exercise and really start being aware. And especially if it's one that you know has been a struggle area for a while, that's the one I want you to eventually, if it's not the first one you pick, let it be like the second one you pick and really spend time being like, this isn't a race. This isn't like, I should have this figured out in one session. No, it might take multiple sessions. It might take time, but take the time because what you do, I know it can feel like a slowdown. Like I call it like a slingshot, right? When you pull it back, right? We're not actually firing off. It's not like we're like firing things, but we're pulling back, right? We're stretching this out and it can feel like it's taking a lot longer. But once we let go, oh, flies, right? Like that's whatever's on that slingshot. I'm thinking like a rock. I'm like David and Goliath here. Slingshot. But that rock is gonna fly. Same thing. Yeah, we're gonna stretch. Yeah, we're gonna slow down. But once we nail it, you're gonna be like, oh, locked in. Got it. I've got the right weight. I got the progressive overload. I have the awareness not just to pivot and keep progressive overloading with weight or reps, but also with my form, but also with knowing I can intentionally like pivot if I'm sick or pivot if life happens or I'm tired or you just have an off day like I did. Like that's gonna happen. Um, we're human. And I think that's the beauty of this whole game. Uh, and I know I call it a game, but like I really do. I like to play games at the gym. It's like a challenge for me. I love a good challenge. So for that, keep training. Just start really making sure you're connected with your body and really connecting those like those checkpoints like we talked about. Um, and of course, if there's any movement pattern that you're just like stuck with, you know, you can post this under here, or even talk with your coach too, because sometimes those conversations can be really powerful where you're like, I've been noticing this, but I haven't said anything. Or, I know there's clients I've worked with form that it's taken time because we had to unlearn a movement pattern and then relearn it. And that can take time too. And so remind yourself too, we're human. And anytime we're building, we just want to build it with like the best foundation and then just continue to build. Because if the foundation's rocky, it's the whole building's going to collapse eventually. It's not if, it's just when. So keep training really beautifully. Like I said, I was going to potentially do a training part 3, like breaking through when you hit a plateau. And this is where we would be like, okay, I know my form is on point. I know I've been progressive overloading, but I can't break. I know for a while there was like a time I couldn't break like 200 pounds with my squat. I was stuck for a while. So we can talk through how do you get through those plateaus, um, and things we can do, in programming, things that you can do, to break them and like eventually come out. And it's okay and all of that. So, anywho, if you have any other ones that you would like to see, you can always like reach out to me personally or drop one below. I always love tailoring it to what you guys want to see. So hopefully, not hopefully, but I'll see you next time.